Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to the When You're podcast, the podcast for when you're doing anything. Today, we're talking about when you're reading funny stories slash confessions. I thought it might be fun to, because last time I kind of talked about that news story, which was completely that was crazy. I don't know why. I felt like that was a wild story. So I thought, why not do something a little more lighthearted this time? And I kind of thought that by reading some confessions, it would be a lot more, you know what I mean? A lot more fun and lighthearted and not as deep as, a woman suffocating her boyfriend in the suitcase. You know what I'm saying? That wasn't the right call. That was definitely the wrong call. And I think I need to be better prepared for the show than I usually am. But anyways, these are just some funny stories that I found online. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't want to say particulars, but anyways, this episode may be extremely long. It may be extremely short. It only comes out to as many as I can find and as much as I can talk about them. So let's hope for the best here, okay? So the first story I have here is a really short one, but I thought it was pretty funny, or there was kind of a deeper message into it. You know what I mean? So first things first is the title. Guy in the next urinal switches mid-pee to another urinal. Now, on the surface, that may seem that's a real pull. You know what I mean? It pulls you in. It's obviously dealing with the bathroom. There's a transition in the story, right? Like that alone sucks you in. You know what I mean? So the next logical thing is to figure out what they really mean. What is it really about? But it's all kind of explanatory. It's all right there in the title. There was a guy in the next urinal, and he switched mid-pee to another urinal. Now, there is only one thing that we don't know about that sentence, and that's where did they switch. But anyways, and the story goes as this. Pretty funny and short story. There were 3 urinals, and I took the far left. Another guy was in the far right. This guy comes in and takes the middle urinal. The guy on the right urinal finishes and leaves. So mid-pee and wiener out, this guy runs to the right urinal. I don't really know why he did this, but funny nonetheless. Now, do I think this man made the right call? I think it depends on any number of factors. But in the middle of peeing, he was like, I don't want to be any closer to this man than I have to. I think that there could be something wrong with the guy telling this story. You know what I mean? What if he was doing something weird? You know what I'm saying? We don't know everything. We can't trust this narrator to be 100% honest with us, right? We can't trust this narrator alone, right? He's telling things from his perspective, but we don't know what the other guy was thinking. He was probably this guy's probably making noise out of his thing. He's doing something crazy over there. I didn't want to be near him, but I had no choice but to take the middle urinal. And that's pretty funny. It's pretty funny when I think about it, because you think about times when you had to use the bathroom or whatnot, at a urinal as a guy, and you're kind of you don't want to. When it comes down to it, is that if one guy is peeing at the urinal, you go to the opposite end, right? You try to not stay, you always try to keep a divide between you, right? So if there were 5 urinals, you know what I'm saying, then the guy on the far left would take one, the guy on the far right would be one, and then there'd be a perfect spot in the middle for the guy to come to and be able to because they have a urinal in between. There's a separation. But in a 3 urinal, he kind of has no choice. He's man, I really got to go, but I don't want to get in between these guys. So he goes into the middle one, and then all of a sudden, dude on the right finishes, does his thing, he gets out, and then guy it's kind of funny to think that like he he kept his wiener out. Like that's pretty funny to think about that. He's like he kept it out. I don't know. It would be wild if he didn't stop peeing. Wouldn't that be crazy? As if he was just like, and then he goes to the other urinal. That'd be pretty funny. That's a funny. That's a short film. That's a little comedy bit right there. Is that like you're so desperate to get away from this man that you like, you transition urinals and you can't stop the flow. So it's like, man, I gotta get away from this guy. That's pretty hilarious. Don't know why he did it. That's what this guy says, who wrote the story. I mean, could have been for any number of reasons. He was probably embarrassed to be that close to you. He probably wanted some more privacy. All of the normal things, you know what I mean? He was just like, he had no choice but to take that urinal because he had to go. So instead he waited, abided his time, and then switched. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I've never done that before. I've never once in my life have like taken up a urinal space and then actively transition. Mostly because like if I have to take up that space, I guess it's like crowded. You know what I mean? So if it was like empty, then like nobody cares. And if it was like one other person there, then, big deal. Anyways, that was a pretty funny story. I think, here's my thing, is that this guy watched him do this. Is that like I wish that there could have been like some sort of like, this is one of those moments where you wish you could read people's thoughts. You know what I mean? It's like, what kind of superpower would you have? And it's like, I would like to read people's thoughts, but like selectively. You know what I mean? It's like, at this time, it would be nice to know this guy's thought process is that like, maybe he's a germaphobe and he's like, I don't want to be near him when I'm doing my thing. You know what I'm saying? That would be pretty wild. But long story short, this guy watched this man pee into the middle urinal, watched another guy go out, and then he plopped on over to the right urinal and continued his pee. That's funny. That's funny. Anyways, moving on. All right, this is like a school one. And most of these like funny stories, they revolve around school because like most people have like embarrassing stories from their younger years. So if it gets too repetitive or you're like, school again, it's just like I feel like as adults, the kind of embarrassing stuff that we do is a lot more grown up and adult, and it just like it's not as childish or as funny as like when you're a kid. You know what I mean? So anyways. How I lost crazy amounts of aura in 24 hours. That's a good headline. Okay. So in 7th grade, I had a friend named Bryant, and he was into roasting people. He would go on for hours if you wore anything that doesn't look good to him, or if you even breathed a certain way. It didn't matter to him, and he would always start the roast off with, "Boy," you know what I mean, like that. Like kind of like, boy, you shouldn't have worn that or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Kind of that kind of boy, like the big loud one. And when I tell you that him saying that was the scariest thing ever, you better believe it because you never knew if he was talking about you or someone else. So one day, I'm walking with Bryant to my class and I have my phone in my hand. And when we get to the main hallway in the school, I bump into someone and I fall and I drop my Motorola phone. The back of the case pops off and the battery slides across the hallway floor. Everyone looked at me. Before I can even react to anything that just happened, I hear one loud ass "boy" and tears instantly start to form in my eyes, and I knew that was my own homie that yelled that. I get up and grab my battery and run to the bathroom and hid as I heard the laughter in the background. I sat on that bathroom toilet and I cried before forcing myself to throw up so I could tell the school nurse that I'm sick and I needed to go home. My mom picked me up from school and whooped my ass when she found out I wasn't actually sick. Now, that is sad. That is tragic. That is not the funniest story in the world. But I just want to think about, like, because I could definitely picture that. Like, I remember my 7th grade, like, school. It was one big building. And I remember, like, the hallways were so packed. And there was, like, lockers and stuff. You know what I mean? Everybody's, like, trying to go from place to place. So anyways, I definitely know what this kid is talking about. Is that, like, you're walking and then all of a sudden it's like, oh snap, you accidentally bump into somebody. It's like, oh snap, I didn't mean to hit you. And you have, like, maybe something in your hand. Hit for the instance of this, he has his phone in his hand and it just slips out. And then it's like that moment where everybody's, like, talking very loud, and then all of a sudden, like, for some reason they all get quiet, and then you're the only one still talking, and it's like, why'd everybody get quiet all of a sudden? Like, what's going on? Why'd that happen? And so I just imagine it, and I see it, and I can imagine myself looking at that kid, just looking at him and going, like, what the, like, he dropped his phone. Like, that's like dropping your Nintendo DS or something like that. It's just like, you saw it, and not only did it fall, it broke the bottom and the battery fell out and slid all the way across. And then your best friend or whoever, your friend right next to you, goes and looks at you, and everybody in the school knows this. Everybody knows that he's about to roast you because he does it to everybody else. It's kind of like this unspoken thing in the school where it's like, oh, if that guy clowns on you, he's going to get on you. And not even his own friends are safe. So he lets out that boy, and everybody just kind of like, everybody starts. I could definitely see that happen. That's like if they were to make an amalgamation of, like, short horror stories, like, I guess horror is the wrong word, maybe embarrassing, just like an amalgamation of, like, embarrassing school stories. This one's definitely there. This one's definitely pretty funny. So I think that's hilarious. Now, it does get sad that he feels humiliated and he goes into the bathroom and pretends to throw up so that way he doesn't have to endure the rest of the day. And then his mom beats him for faking being sick. I just imagine the mom's, like, at work, or maybe she's doing something, and she gets the phone call, and they're kind of like, listen, your son is sick. And then she finds him and she's like, I know you're not sick. Dude, imagine she picks him up from school, takes him home, and she goes, boy, I know you're not sick. And then she beats his ass. Oh my gosh. That's just like that's just a downward spiral, you know what I mean? And it's not like, they don't say it in the story, obviously, but, like, it's not like he got away with it. You know what I mean? He skipped, like, he missed school, but now everybody knows, like, they're still going to talk to him about it. Like, he didn't avoid anything. He may have, like, postponed it, but he's definitely, like, he's still screwed either way. So I think that's funny. All right, this one is a job story. It's not so much as a story. It's more like a confession. They confess to something they did at their job or something that they did involving a job. So I'm just going to read it. I posted fake jobs on internet so I could build my own resume. All right. So immediately I'm like, let's see where this goes. Let's figure out what's going on here. Their English is not perfect. I posted fake jobs on internet so I could build my own resume. I mean, it's fine enough. You get what they're going for. Anyways, here it goes. When I was 19, 20 years old, I was looking for jobs and could not find any, and people would tell me to build a nice resume. The problem was I didn't know how to do it. So I posted fake jobs on the internet and would get resumes. I used those resumes to build my own, using the skills that I liked on their resumes. I could also tell who was competing with me for those jobs that I posted. I feel bad for those people that thought it was a genuine job and applied. Dang. That is not right. That is sad, really. Is not, when you think about it, it's kind of like it's really a desperation. You know what I mean? You're not per se, what's the right word? He's not doing it to be mean to these people, you know what I mean? Like he feels the guilt, or she. They feel guilt about this not because it's like, what's it called? They feel guilt about it not because they tried to do it on purpose. They were just like, I'm desperate. I don't know what else to do. It's kind of like unintentional guilt. It's like, yeah, I did this bad thing, but it was like I kind of needed to try to figure out a way. It's like, yes, I scammed these people, but I had to try. I had to figure out something. It's just kind of like a sad confession, really. It's really just like a, dang, I shouldn't have done that, and I feel bad about it, but I was desperate, and now I kind of like figured out how to build a nice resume, or like I can like copied off of what they had, and now I know that like when we apply jobs, we're not alone in this. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a sad confession, and it's messed up, but they didn't do it out of like, they didn't have any really bad intentions. They just wanted to, progress themselves. And sometimes, we're not going to all sit here and act like we never like copied stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I feel this guy, but man, probably got some people, who were looking for a job and nothing came through. So don't know what you're going to do. All right. Oh, this one's wild. Okay. As a child, I copied a poem from a book and won first place in a poetry contest. Speaking of copying, speaking of plagiarism. All right. When I was in third grade, I was very into reading/writing and often stayed up far past my bedtime reading anything within my comprehension level so that I could get my hands on them. You know what I mean? So, I read that wrong. Within my comprehension level that I could get my hands on. We had a stack of children's encyclopedias I loved on all sorts of topics. Dinosaurs, the planets, world history, including one of stories and poems. One poem stood out in particular. It was about solitude in nature and really struck a chord with me. Because I loved the poem so much, I copied it down into a journal I had of my own writing and passages/poems I found inspiration in. Because I was so young, like single digits here, it never occurred to me to write down the author or anything, especially not in my own journal. So a few weeks went by, and my mom had stumbled upon my journal while cleaning my room. She read the poem and assumed it was original writing. She approached me about it that night and was so proud of it. Like any 8-year-old, I wanted my mom's love, approval, and her pride and joy. So I didn't tell her I had found the poem in a book. I didn't think it would be a big a deal, and she would be so happy and like so proud of me. You know what I mean? Fast forward a month or two, my mom is reading the Sunday paper and sees a poetry contest for young people. She immediately thinks of my poem and insists I enter it. That afternoon, she had my dad drive us to his office so she could type it up. before home computers and laptops and such. She sends a copy into the newspaper and, of course, because it's an 8-year-old's name and an adult's published poem, like a magazine, yeah, it wins the first prize in my age group. My parents are so happy with me, and I feel so incredibly guilty. Within the next month, the poem and my picture are ran on the front page of the poem section of the paper. I'm invited to read the poem as part of an award ceremony for all the contestants' participants. Of course I go because my mom wants us to, and why wouldn't I? You know what I mean? They give them like a small... I get a small medal, you know what I mean? It's like a little reward for it. They give them like a ribbon and like a first place prize, and like it would have been wild if it was like they gave him some money, or her gave him. Yeah, they gave him some cash. Now this is the aftermath. I have spent more sleepless hours on this poem than I can count. A few years later, we learn about plagiarism in school, and I feel as though I'm being personally called out. I remember tearing out the book's page with the poem, ripping it up and throwing it away wrapped in an unused sanitary napkin because I was so afraid anyone would find out. It's been 20 years since that award ceremony, and even though I realized it was a childhood mistake, that isn't even that large. I still can't quite shake the guilt. Tragic. That is such a... That's like a... This might sound bad. It's like a... Not as bad, but like, you know how... I was going to say something else. No, never mind. That's just a funny plagiarism confession. And it's kind of telling that nobody in that poetry competition recognized that poem. And now that I think about it, I kind of want to know what poem it was, because it's kind of like, what's it called? When you go on like Twitter or Instagram or something, and somebody says like, my 5-year-old son said that he is so profound by the way that the light on the sun in the sky lights up the world, and says we all have to be like the sun and light up our own lives. And then somebody on Twitter is like, your son didn't say that. Like, he didn't, like, your kid, why are you lying? Like, why would you say something that's not true? Like, we all know that your 5-year-old didn't say anything like that. And that's kind of how I feel about this confession. I guess some people should have been a little bit more skeptical of an 8-year-old coming up with like a beautiful poem about that. But then again, you know, nobody really knows or I guess read that book. So I don't know. I think that's funny. Imagine how like the mom must have been like raving about that forever. She's like, he won this poetry contest. Like, can you imagine? I could never imagine my parents like reading the paper or like going online and being like, you should enter this contest. Like, what? What are you talking about? Like, you should enter this poetry contest. Why would I enter the poetry contest? You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's kind of funny the way that he's seeking approval. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I'll do it. Like, it's original. It's my own. You know what I mean? It's just an example of how the lie rolls and rolls and rolls. You know what I'm saying? So that's pretty funny. All right. Okay, this next one is a kind of like a romance story, like a confession, but it's like in romance. So anyways. So I was flirting relentlessly with him for months. It was so bold and silly. You'd think it's ironic, but I actually meant it. Like, for example, what if we held hands? Haha, imagine, unless... or declaring I'm his number one simp or his club president. That's wild. That is wild. Anyways, my neurodivergent brain found it easier to flirt through funny things and memes just in case of rejection. He told me he didn't get it at first, and later he thought he's just reading into things and thought I'm just jokingly flirting with him. He didn't want our friendship to get tainted from him thinking I'm interested in acting on it. Skip forward, and one of our friends told me she's tired of me and such playing around, so she told them to confess to her a while ago that he has a tiny crush on me. I got very flustered, but I thought, wow, that's really a while ago, and he doesn't really act like he does, so maybe he isn't interested anymore. But then he eventually found out through the same friend that I don't flirt as a joke and think it's confusing if people do. So after like 4 months, he got the courage to ask me if I'm actually flirting with him or if it's just jokes. And I was so flustered. I wasn't expecting him to be that bold at all. I tell you, I went, and then quiet and started fidgeting hard. He waited and looked concerned, but then added, I wouldn't mind if you mean it. In fact, I would welcome it. But if it's just jokes, then that's totally cool. And I guess him saying that gave me the reassurance I needed. So I said, maybe I might have been flirting with you for real. Maybe. For months. And his sigh of relief. I will never forget it. He was so happy and said he's been interested in me for a while, but didn't want to ruin our friendship by misinterpreting my actions, because he didn't want to be that guy that thinks, oh, a girl is nice to me, she must be interested. It's been 4 months since that initial confession now. We've been a couple for 3, and I still have such a massive crush on him. It feels unreal that such an amazing person loves me and teaches me to love myself. It makes me feel very at home and indirectly motivates me into becoming the best version of myself possible. Now, isn't that sweet? Isn't that adorable, huh? This is very, very cute. Now, for those of you wondering, oh, how old is this girl? Like, how old, you know what I mean? Like, she has to be like 13 years old. This girl's in her 20s, all right? Now, that's not a bad thing, you know what I'm saying? But it's like kind of like cute, you know what I mean? This is like very, very middle school crush kind of a thing, but it transcends all boundaries, all right? This is a very cute story. I thought this was like it kind of felt like a weird confession, but it was like just a cute little story about how like she was flirting with him, and then he was like, yeah, flirt with me, you know what I mean? Do that stuff. I thought that was like a cute one. I like that one. I thought that was like a very nice confession that she's like, ha ha ha, let's hold hands, joke, JK, LOL. Unless you want to, you know what I mean? I just was like, who would say that? Like, there's nobody I know who would say that. So I was just like, that's so stupid, but it's also like, it worked out in the end. So, you know, happy for her. All right. This one's a supposedly embarrassing one, but it's really not, kind of. All right, I'm in college in fall 22 semester. I had this super fine graduate TA who taught the lab I was in. Once he realized I was basically as old as he was, he started getting real flirty and friendly. He had all the subtlety of a brick to the face and would openly flirt with me in front of the class. So the final rolls around and I knew I was going to confess my crush on him. He heavily suggested that I start at a question that was near him so he could be next to me when I started the final. In this class, we had to walk around to do our exam. It's a practicum. Anyway, after the exam was over, I waited until every student left the room and I hung out for a while until I got him alone. I finally told him, I have a crush on you. And he stared at me and was like, yeah, and? As if he wanted me to say more. I blue screened so hard because I expected him to reject me outright that I didn't know what to say. So I just went, that's it, bye, and walked away at the speed of sound. He said, thank you, and it's been awkward every time I've seen him since. What he was looking for was you to say more. You know what I mean? You ruined it by letting your feelings tell you to run away. That was, I definitely feel that. You know what I'm saying? It's just like you're so open, you're so vulnerable. You just want to like run away and hide. But I think in that moment, you just need to stand. You know what I mean? You need to stand on business and tell them, let them know what's up. You know what I mean? Tell them that you stand on business. You know, that's the moment to stand on business. It's just like, hey, I have feelings for you, and stand there and be vulnerable and open. And you know, who knows what the worst could be? But it's just like you already expect it to be rejected outright. So it's like, you know, you already know that the worst was going to happen. And now you just made it completely awkward and weird. And it didn't need to be. It could have been very, very cool. You know what I mean? It could have been a very nice moment. But you walked away from him. So it's kind of like, now he said, yeah, and it's like, that's the time to use your words. You know what I mean? But instead, you know, I get it. It's tough. It's rough, but you know, sometimes that's the way things roll. But anyways, those were just a few embarrassing stories that I found, or little confessions here and there. Nothing too crazy, a little bit heartwarming, a little, you know, a little story about like, oh, this is what happens when you copy people, or when you lie to people, or when you're in the bathroom. You know what I'm saying? Just like little stuff here and there. So I thought that would be a funny little topic to look at and kind of poke fun at people's mistakes and stuff going on. But anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.